I'm here today with Dr. Emma Hitt. Emma, thank you for being with us today.
You're welcome.
And in honor of full disclosure, I need to tell our audience that I am married to Emma's father. Enough said about that.
Yes.
Mr. Wonderful. All right, great. Now, Emma, what we'd like you to do is explain your genre of writing for our audience, if you would.
Right. So I am what is known as a medical writer, and there aren't too many of us around, maybe a couple of thousand or so in the U.S., and medical writing is actually a subset of technical writing, and that, of course, is a subset of nonfiction writing. And when I say medical writing, there's actually two subsets of medical writing. There's actually FDA-related medical writing, which is regulatory information, which I don't do. And then there's medical writing that specifically focuses on writing for physician audience. And CME, it's called Continuing Medical Education. And physicians need to take that to keep their certificates current. So that's what I write.
Oh, okay. And how did you get started?
Well, I have a background in science, as you know, a PhD from Emory University in molecular biology with a sort of an emphasis on cancer-related cell biology. And I discovered quite early on that I wasn't cut out for science experiments, so I figured I needed to do something with my life. And I always did have an affinity towards writing. I was told that I had a skill at it, and so I thought maybe to combine the two. And then I found out there was an organization called the National Association for Science Writers, National Association for Science Writers. So I looked into that, and eventually I evolved into medical writing.
So what was the first job you ever got as a science writer?
I actually, as a science writer, so I was still in graduate school, and the money was tight, and so I figured I'd try to get some freelance work. And one of the first jobs I got was for the American Cancer Society, writing medical news for their website, and that was actually a consumer audience.
And how did you actually start that process to work for them?
To get started, I sent out emails to everyone that could possibly hire a science medical writer. It was a numbers game to me. I didn't take any kind of rejection personally. I sent out so many emails I don't even remember, and eventually jobs started coming my way. And then I focused on really trying to provide good writing and to be responsive, to provide good customer service and try to build that client base that way.
Would you say it's a difficult career to get into?
It helps if you have a science background. You really cannot do it without a science background. Whether you need a PhD is debatable. For some types of medical writing you do. But is it difficult? It's really all in your mind.
Is it?
Anything's as difficult as you think it's going to be. If you think it's impossible, then yeah, you're probably going to be right. That's how that works.
So what's a typical day like?
Typical day. Well, I am an early bird. I get up around 5 a.m., 5 or 6 a.m., and I start work, and I do a couple of hours before my daughter wakes up, get her off to school, and then from about 9 to 4 p.m., I focus on my work most days. And so I get it all over by 4 p.m., and then I have the evening free to myself. And my work day is very quiet. One thing I would say to anybody that hasn't been a freelance writer working at home is that you have to enjoy your own company. I make plans to have lunch with friends at least once a week, to have a little company. It gets very solitary. As you know, writing is a solitary pursuit.
Especially a freelance writer.
Yes, exactly. And some people don't realize that until they actually do it, and they yearn for an office environment. So.
Now, as far as finding, for our audience to possibly find freelance work, are there any job lists or anything that people can go to help them find work in this particular genre?
Well, of course, I have my hit list. The hit list after my last name. It's kind of morbid, but people called it that, and then I decided to name it that after. But it's a medical writing jobs list that gets sent out once a week. It's totally free. It always will be free. People have heard about the hit list, and they send me jobs, and I post them, and it goes out every Friday. And there's about 2,500 people signed up to that list right now. So it's a really good way for people to find a freelance writer, medical writer in a hurry, or staff writer too. And it's a good way to find out what kind of work is out there if you're interested in this field.
And you don't charge anything to advertisers or to the people that go to the list. In other words, it's just a really a completely free resource for people that perhaps want to learn about freelance work.
Exactly, exactly. And I would say that I did it because the organizations that are there to help freelance medical writers and science writers were actually charging employers to put out jobs, and I thought that was not a good idea. And it's actually, you know, whatever you do to help other people, it actually does always come back to you, and it's turned out to be a great marketing tool, and it, as far as getting new work in for myself, so it's been great. And
because you've shared the wealth in a sense.
Exactly, and I would recommend anybody that wants to go into freelance would, you know, try to help other freelancers too.
Yeah.
So it's all
and
about
connect
that.
with other freelancers.
Exactly.
And how often do you send your hit list out?
I send it out once a week on Fridays.
Oh, okay. So you get that much notification of jobs. I mean, how many jobs on average would be in the hit list?
It can be, so I separate it out between staff jobs and freelance jobs, but it's usually 0 to 5 freelance and 0 to 5 staff jobs.
Now, in the business of science writing, let's get back to the business end of it, because I think that's so important. What sort of advice, if you were to give 2 or 3 tips, what sort of advice would you give someone that was either starting as a science writer or perhaps as an established science writer but would like to take their career to the next level?
Okay, so 2 different groups there. So
yes.
the starting science writer, maybe you're in graduate school and you're not sure you want to go on to the typical postdoc, you know, graduate school track. You want to finish your PhD, but to get into science writing, I would first of all get your writing skills. Make sure you have confidence in your writing skills, because if you don't, who else is going to have confidence in
But sometimes
yourself?
it takes time to build confidence, and
Right.
doesn't that take practice?
Exactly. Yes, I mean, so exactly. So get the skills you need. If you're not confident, then go take a class in technical writing. If you're at a university, at grad school in a science, it's probably a journalism class or some kind of writing class that you can take. So that would be a first step. The second step is to make connections. Join the local groups, the AMWA, American Medical Writers Association, NASW. Go to their conferences.
What's the NASW?
National Association of Science Writers.
Okay.
Anything that is network oriented. Ask people advice. You know, people generally, if you approach them in a professional way, are going to give you advice. It's amazing. There's no harm in asking.
Can you pitch, you know, a lot of freelance writers pitch story ideas to magazines or whatever, organizations, whatever. Can science writers do the same sort of thing? Is it all right to do that?
Yes, it's absolutely all right. I find that it takes a lot of time to put together a story and a pitch, and I would do that if you wanted to write for a certain publication like Nature or Discover or whatever magazine it is. Target that particular one and spend the time on a pitch. But as far as making money, making it into a lucrative career, if you spend too much time as a freelance writer developing pitches and they don't use them and they reject them, that's not a good way to make a living.
Oh, okay.
So,
okay. All right. Well, there you have it from one of the nation's leading experts in science writing, and I'm not just saying that as a proud mom, but it's true. And I thank you, Emma, for taking the time to share with our viewers today. And if anyone has any questions, can they contact you?
Sure.
So
Absolutely.
they can do it, go to
By
your
email.
website, Emma at hittmedicalwriting.com.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you.